The other side to it is just everything that the audience didn't see on that stage. Like, there's so many moving parts of this show that so many people haven't seen.
And so many people probably won't believe.
This group of sophomores can lead this show and put a sold out show on a stage. Shanghaied is a story of love, intrigue, and dumplings. Shanghaied tells the story of Tom, a young Canadian man who was living in Shanghai in the 1930s, and he falls in love with Lily, a local girl. Shanghaied tells their story of how they navigate their relationship while a gangland heist takes place in their neighborhood. Ultimately, Shanghaied is a story about how relationships come together and how we can all do a little bit better when we learn more about each other.
There's no musicals that really talk about Chinese history. So this is a really unique story in terms of we're in Shanghai, we're an international school, and we're making a musical that talks about Shanghai.
The whole show, all the operations, the performance, the preparation, the script, it was an incredibly ambitious undertaking, and one that I would say would scare a lot of adults away. It does scare a lot of adults away. It's hard to do this kind of work. It's hard for adults who've done this with lots of funding and facilities and everything else. Putting together something like this is difficult. And watching a group of high school students, especially from the administrative side, the logistics side, put it together was really so impressive and so interesting and really inspiring in so many ways.
I've always been really interested in composing music. I've done orchestral compositions, I've done solo compositions, and I've played in a rock band. And I've always wanted to create something on a large scale. And the idea came to me that maybe I should try doing a musical, since I've been part of many pit orchestras and many casts for musical theater projects. And so when I first developed this idea, I kind of brainstormed a little bit of what I could do about a musical. I initially really wanted to do something about history because I'm a little bit of a history buff, and I think part of what helped me really make this decision was my Asian history class in 9th grade really forced me to do a lot of research into Shanghai, and I decided that 1930s Shanghai would be the perfect topic to talk about in a musical.
When I was approached with the outline, we had a lot of the main characters kind of in the skeletal form. We had our Tom, we had our Lily. We had a little bit of the gang storyline. It wasn't super fleshed out, but the basis of it was there. So what I think I brought to the table was offering a different perspective on the storyline and also how to make these characters living, breathing human beings, and to really capture the city, because ultimately we wanted to capture Shanghai in the 1930s, and that didn't happen until we had characters that people could not only relate to, but really empathize with and feel like they were connected with them.
The writing process was complicated. It was something that was a little unexpected. A lot of it was kind of unplanned. We didn't really have a plan as, okay, we're gonna have this section, this scene done by this day. At first we just kind of went along with it.
When we started, it was just a lot of bouncing ideas off of each other. We went through so many drafts with storylines that like no one will ever see. We had a lot of help. It wasn't, I don't want to ever say it was just Matt and I. We had so much help from so many great people. One of them being Elena Steele, who really helped us create these characters, giving them their own story, giving them motives, giving them interests and things that they enjoyed. And I think that was really important for our story, because if we were just narrating the series of events without people that had emotions and people that had their own intentions, the story would never come to life and the energy would never be there.
I think my job was to help us get organized in our workload, to identify the story objectives that we had to accomplish, and a schedule for the amount of time we had to work through those story objectives. One of our processes was to go through the story and make sure every relationship worked logically. So rather than trying to build an outline around events that happened in the story, we tried to build an outline around the relationships and how each of those relationships had its own story. So we were able to break down our scenes into looking at the purpose of that scene in this story and seeing if all of the relationships, there might be a story beat that would be purposeful or correct in that section of the story, or maybe just a few. And we started looking at each scene in regards to making sure that we're satisfying the needs of every storyline.
I think it was amazing. It was brilliant. I think the help that Mike gave us with the script was really just invaluable. He gave us some advice as to like write a lot, and then from there we can cut down as to what we need to do. That was a really good choice because we had a lot of material to work with from that point. He gave us a lot of tips as to like key storyline parts and also certain twists that we should have in each scene to keep the story moving and to have purpose.
So I found the process working with Matt and Andrew to be very, very fulfilling. I can tell you honestly that working with Matt, I was actually a little intimidated because he's such a smart composer, and the way he puts music together is a lot like the way I put stories together. If anything, with Matt, I was hoping to try and suggest to make sure that the lyrics had story value to them. So we weren't just stopping and singing. We were actually injecting story value, story beats if possible, into each song. So we're keeping everything moving forward, even though we're stopping for a great musical number. With Andrew, I think I was actually super impressed. Without a doubt, he grabbed onto the concepts of storytelling faster than anybody I've ever met. His instincts were fantastic. We were able to talk about deep subtext ideas that usually don't come up in the process of learning how to create stories for several years. Subtext is a very difficult concept to learn for a lot of people, but Andrew caught it right away and ran with it. So in terms of that, I couldn't have been happier working with Matt and Andrew. It was great. It was great.
Hi, my name is Andrew Huang. I'm the co-creator of Shanghaied. This musical is going to be a student-led community theater project. We still have positions open for actors and people on the operations side. So, if you're interested, please scan the QR code in our poster. There's only 1 week left to apply.
The operations recruitment process was a little disorganized at first because we weren't really aware of what roles we needed. We weren't aware of the scale of what we were doing. We brought Sarah on board first because she's someone who I've always known who is incredibly talented at dance, and a musical with its music wouldn't be fully complete without some dazzling choreography, and we knew that Sarah could do just that.
One important thing that we both did that I think was super helpful was we had to find people that we really trusted. And so Aaron and Phoebe were two people that we really looked to take on the producer role. And they were such a huge help because one thing Matt and I learned very early on in this production was that we can't do everything ourselves. When we tried to do it, it never worked because things would fall apart, things would be forgotten, and ultimately two people putting on an entire production is next to impossible. Another person was Jessica. Jessica is a very talented artist, and she really was the first person to take the words, the notes that Matt and I had written and put on paper and bring it to life. It was the first time people actually saw visually what Shanghaied was. And I think it was also a big help for Matt and I because we both saw that this is what it's going to look like. It wasn't the actual production, but it gave people excitement and it brought excitement to us.
She's got like the how do I say it? It's like the perfect theater voice.
Yeah.
You know.
The auditions were a little tough at first because it was hard for me to get everyone in the same room together, much less like even dividing them into groups. It was tough. So we needed to figure out a way to do it remotely. And so what I had them do was I found a bunch of monologues that I enjoyed doing for my own personal auditions. And I put those together because I felt like they represented a lot of our characters in the show. So what I had the actors do is they filmed that monologue and they filmed themselves singing a song of their choice.
I was actually debating whether to audition or not because I was really busy this year with A-Push and everything, my first AP class. But I decided that this might be the last time that I have a chance to act because in junior year and senior year, it will only get even more busy. So I decided that like, why not just give it a try and I get to hang out with friends too.
I was in drama club when I was like in elementary school, but that was it. And yeah, this was like my first time doing acting ever again after such a long time. It kind of feels like, you know, how like you met an old friend after such a long time. It felt really familiar and it felt like that a part of me is back and I really enjoyed that.
Whoever has the will to sign up for this in the first place, that means they're ready to contribute. That means they like helping out. That means they like doing stuff. Some people just like to do nothing, you know, but everybody in Shanghai, like if they have time, if they have energy, they're willing to help out and they're willing to make it a better experience for everyone else. Nobody's selfish here because if someone was selfish, they wouldn't waste their time doing this, right? So I think that's what's really nice about it.
I found the musicians based on people that I think would make a wonderful ensemble. I wanted to keep in mind balance. I didn't want a ton of a certain instrument and a ton of like something else and then overpower a certain section. I referenced a lot of different orchestras for pit orchestras in different Broadway groups and how they designed their orchestras. And then I eventually settled on this idea, okay, I can put 16 people, 4 rhythm section, you know, 2 brass, 4 woodwinds, 4 strings, and then really just try and put it together as much as I could. They were the most amazing people I've had to collaborate with for music in a long time.
Working with very talented and incredible people, especially with Cline, our conductor, and everybody that was playing an instrument in the pit orchestra. Everyone is so passionate about what they do that when it all came together, it was really, really good. Every single song in the play itself was fantastic. Like there are multiple genres of music which really, you know, inspired the pit orchestra itself. And then being able to play all those genres within one musical, it really gives a different feel to the music.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you guys the blocking and then we're gonna run it and then I'll zoom in. Yeah. Okay. I remember the first rehearsal was a bit of a train wreck. It was my first taste at really having to manage so many different sides of the stage. And we started with the opening scene. That was the first thing we rehearsed. That was our first day. And the opening scene, it introduces every single storyline that we have in our show. And it was rough at first. I think all 3 of us, Matt, Sarah, and I, had our own challenges during that first rehearsal, especially with so many people together for the first time. I think it was a lot of nerves. So it was hard to get their attention. It was hard to really communicate, not just amongst ourselves, but with everyone. I think slowly I picked up on things that worked in our rehearsals and just tried to use those and keep building on them as we went.
It's risky out there. It's not always some soft love affair. It's far, far from home. On these dangerous streets, free to roam. We've got to stay, no matter what the stakes.
always be on edge. Gotta punch your back when you're in Shanghai. Gotta be prepared to go and take a...
Shanghailand is a special number because all of other, like, it's a very distinct style in contrast to Matt's other pieces. So right when we first heard that, I was like, oh, this song's such a bop, right? But like we like Shanghailand. Everyone likes Shanghailand, okay? So yeah, and then I was at my house with Sarah, Joanne, Olivia, and Darren. We just started doing like stuff in the past basically to this music, and it works.
When we first started, I didn't know any of them, and it's kind of scary. But then they told us it's like boom, boom, and then bam, and then it's like how we're always talking over each other, and there's that chemistry and bond. It was fun. No, it was not fun learning it. It was fun doing it though. It was fun performing Shanghailand, and it's the first time we performed it in front of the other cast, and everybody was clapping, and it was really a proud moment that we actually did it.
In Shanghai.
I think the cast that we put together, we have a really good mixture of people. We have a very diverse cast in terms of from high school all the way to elementary, and also their amount of experience on stage. We have people where theater has almost been their entire life, and those that are just starting in their first production. And I think that was actually very helpful, both for me learning as a first-time director, and also I think it added to the excitement of our show.
So first for the main characters, I have to go find a tailor and show her my design and decide fabric and get some measurements so she can make what I want. And there's some other characters that I bought off Taobao or find at PAC storage. And then the other ones for mainly guys, I asked them to bring their own things like shirts and leather shoes because we don't have a big budget.
Budgeting was definitely a concern. Especially when we started, because we had no idea how much it would cost to put on this production. And so when I set the budget, I think Vicky and Sam were very good at being very thrifty. They found a lot of things that I didn't even expect. And it was also thanks to SAS for really giving us the opportunity to borrow a lot of their costumes, because we observed a lot of their shows and we saw, okay, I like this piece, what if we combined it?
I'm one of two of the stage managers, and I, along with Megan, manage backstage and take care of all the props and all that stuff. Initially, when I was given the role of stage manager, I had no idea what that was. I was like, what am I supposed to do? And at first I kind of just had Megan take the lead since she was my senior, and I felt like she had more experience in organizing and managing stuff, so I had her take the lead for a while. But then as I got more used to the role, I started to kind of work with her and kind of started assuming leadership a lot more.
One of the biggest learnings that Matt and I both had was to set the budget very clearly at the beginning of the show. And I think it sounds pretty obvious to a lot of people that of course you should have a clear budget for your production. But Matt and I think we paid some attention to it, but it was never very detailed and thought out. And I think part of it was that we were so wrapped up in oh my gosh, this is happening, but I don't know what the next step is. And that we couldn't really focus on a bigger scale of our budget in general. And so what that created was it created a lot of miscommunication and created a lot of difficulty for our other departments. So with costuming, with hair and makeup, with the set and props team, there was a lot of things that they were unsure of, especially because if you're not sure how to do the financing correctly and you're not sure how to do it in detail, what number are they supposed to work with? And so a lot of it was just step-by-step learning.
So we're nearing opening night.
Right.
What were some of the problems you ran into with finances?
Well, for finances, one of the main things that we were focusing on before the show was ticket sales and also just budget and things like that. And I was in charge of kind of making the ticket sales survey and kind of recording the tickets down, and it was kind of hard as we got closer to show day because there were some people, especially some like sponsors or some families who wanted to switch shows or different areas of seating, and it was quite stressful because I had like a spreadsheet, but then sometimes seats would be taken and there wouldn't be enough, and then we also had to worry about selling enough as well.
We knew that we had to meet a certain, well actually we didn't know because we didn't really have a very strong budget at first. We didn't really know what's the top cost we had to cover because costs were coming in left and right that we didn't, foresee or expect, like transportation, dry cleaning, tickets, concessions, all these things that kind of came in that final month. It was just overall a very hectic process and something that I wish will not happen in the future.
Okay, thank you so much. No problem. Bye-bye. Okay, so we got catfish numbers from the first two places, and then this one just told us to wait.
The key here, because they're all businesses here, is that we're students from the SAS and we're combining plots out, because otherwise it's just like, okay, I'm a random person. Yeah. So it's like the key is to emphasize the fact that we're students and like we're right there, that's our core. We're in Huang, and it's a local production, community production. Because then it's more specific and it's more benefit. If you just say we're a musical, then it's like, okay, why did you pick us?
So that's the experience you have to convey to people. People want to enjoy stuff. People want to have fun. People want to relax. And so when you're telling people about Shanghai, oh, it's a student-led production. Okay, so what? We're not going to know about that a week from now. We're not going to know what happened in like scene 2 or act 3. And so we need to sell the experience of being in the show, the value of like sitting next to your friend and like laughing in a scene, the value of clapping at the end, the value of seeing your friends on stage performing and working hard. And so that's what we need right now, is we need all of you to think just like for a few minutes or so.
So the sponsorships were, we were just kind of lingering at that time, like a month before the show, because many like restaurants or people we contacted, they like just never replied or they declined us. But again, like last minute, we asked again, and I think we got 8 or 9 sponsors. So it was very last minute because we asked again and with a different strategy.
I think the biggest challenge that we met was that we only had one day to tech and rehearse in the theater before our opening night. So that was really stressful, and we managed to pull it off.
The day we moved into the theater was pretty nerve-wracking for me. I felt very confident in the choreography, and I felt very confident in the pit. I think they all gelled together very quickly and very smoothly. I was a little concerned about tech because personally, I'm not the most tech-savvy person in the world. And so we brought on our tech crew pretty late, I guess, in the process. Ashley, who is our head of lighting, Luke, Cyrus, our spotlights, Prachi, who did our sound, and Becky, who did our subtitles. I think they all had to work through a lot of frustrating moments because of the time crunch that we had. It wasn't like our rehearsals where we said performance was a month away. What they had was your performance is a day away. We need to perfect these things. And so really a lot of the credit goes to them for that.
I've worked with a lot of directors over the years, and Certainly Andrew and Matt didn't come across as anything less than professional, totally capable, totally on top of things. They'd done their homework, and so in that sense it really wasn't any change from working with other directors in the past, other than the fact that at the end of the day they were still calling me Mr. Taffel. Acting with students was a little different from time to time, because that was, I've never done a performance where students were acting like adults, if that makes sense. I've always done performances where I was a student. When I was younger, I was a student, and other students were acting like adults, and it all made sense a little bit. I think in this experience, it was a bit different, because there were people who, were acting like adults who obviously weren't, right? These were former students of mine or people I knew from school and things like that. So that was a little different initially. I think once we all got into our roles and got into seeing each other as in those roles as those emerged, that really it became a non-issue. And it just was, again, it was another group of folks performing together and putting together a very special project.
5, 6, 7, yes? That's long. Yes. Because the thing is that they're never ready within because what happened yesterday was that when you started playing, Bryson was still doing his crinkling. And then also in the courtroom scene, Rose's book that she used yesterday is not heavy enough. We have a heavy book here, I just don't know where it is.
We need another book
Heavier.
For the
courtroom.
Yeah, for such a scene, and then blank white paper, not newspaper paper for the.
Look, I feel kind of nervous, I mean, who could I possibly mess up in front of? I can mess up in front of my parents, but it's okay, because I know that we would do well. I've prepared months for this. All of us have done so much hard work for this. It's gonna go well.
Break a leg.
Thank you, Michael.
Andrew, where are you?
Wait, backstage in our changing room? Oh, when did they go to places?
50. Yeah, is that good or no?
Yeah, sure.
If it's not a good time, tell me. Because I don't know what I'm doing. Honestly, I don't know enough. I haven't done a show in like 2 years.
You can't switch with people? Oh, you're gonna pass them out.
We have no seats, so we were
Wait, who's this?
random person.
他们一定要做一起，对吧？快 influencer.
We have 2 lines here. We have 2 lines. Yeah, we have 2 lines. One is, yeah, okay.
Pardon? No, I don't think so.
Why would you want me to get? I'm nervous. Everyone's nervous. Harry's nervous. Look at him. Can't stop. I'm not nervous. Can't stop ready.
It's weird to see all.
女士们、先生们，晚上好！欢迎大家今天来看《上海奇缘》。Thank you and enjoy our show.
Get outside and look around. Magic City awaits. It's when you're free to go about as you please. A place for you to thrive, to start a brand new life. That's the way that it goes when you're in Shanghai.
Yeah, how's
He said something here hurts.
Wait,
He's lying on the floor.
Let me check his temperature. Give me a sec.
He's at the other stage.
Where's my thermometer?
Do I have to play bow?
No, this one.
Do I have to play bow tomorrow? You better get well. Otherwise, Michael, I'm not even kidding. You're gonna play the judge tomorrow. If I was to, I'm playing bow.
So, I managed to twist a blood vessel or
tool and cut blood flow off to a organ somewhere in my abdomen, and that needed surgery. So as soon as I finished performing, or really while you guys were doing the bows and Andrew was doing his speech, I ran away.
We were all really worried because it's like he's our friend, and it was a really great moment for all of us, and we wanted him to like also go through with it, but then we also didn't want him to like
Yeah, he spent a lot of time on this, and we wanted him to kind of have it pay off in a sense.
So both Andrew and Michael had to like jump into new roles, and so I was actually really surprised because before I got to rehearsals were called I think like 12 on Sunday, and so I arrived around 12, but I saw that Andrew and the whole entire gang was already there, just with Sarah, practicing the dances, making sure that it would seem as if Andrew was meant to play the role. But what I found extremely surprising was that the whole gang was there. It wasn't just him with Sarah learning his dance, but the whole gang, they were in costume. They were like ready to go on stage, even at like 3 hours before the actual show. I noticed that during intermission or during kind of the times where the gang wasn't on stage, they would come into the dressing room, because they were in other dressing rooms, and they would come into our dressing room with Andrew and they would practice songs together. And it wasn't just like they were like, oh, Andrew's new, okay, we'll just do our thing. But they were like, oh, like Andrew's part of us now, we gotta help him. And that, again, just made me feel so good that I was a part of this production. And again, Michael was kind of stressed, but it was also so nice to see. I think Andrew sent me like a video of him like at midnight the day before just practicing his lines again and again. And I think that a lot of people are like, oh, haha, the judge. He has like 3 lines. He doesn't even get like a mic. He only gets a stand mic, and he doesn't have to do anything about it. But Michael, ever since 5th grade, he hasn't acted. And he's always just been behind the camera. And for him to just last notice take on this challenge was amazing to see as well. And for him, although he was maybe a little bit nervous, he didn't show that at all on stage for both shows. And I'm just super proud of him.
Just look around and take in the sweet sound. Shanghai will satisfy. Your heart is your own, but it still is our home. Don't sigh, for it's Shanghai, the most wondrous place to be. The city that I can see,
It was pretty magical. It was something truly special, and obviously it couldn't be done without everybody else, but the idea that it came from, I don't know, just reading a book while I was on Chinese New Year vacation, thinking about, oh wow, what if I did a musical about like some guys running around, I don't know, 1930s Shanghai, and now it's on some big stage being performed with a live orchestra, an amazing cast, and some wonderful people behind everything. It's just incredible. It's more than I could ever ask for.
I think it's like this little breakthrough for us, and I think it should be known to more people that a group of high schoolers can put on something like this. As far as I know, like, there's no one that could do that.
I actually think this was a really well-written play because it not only incorporated what we learned about like Shanghai, the history of Shanghai in like school, but it also incorporated a lot of like what we experience in SAS, because we're in a group of like filled with like international students. A lot of us, like, we're not just plainly like from Shanghai. We come from a lot of different places, and we understand what it's like to be like kind of like a foreigner, even though we look like Chinese. But then a lot of times when I go to the local Chinese places, they would I would feel really kind of like out of place. So I guess this show was really similar to that, and how the two cultures cross and they learn to understand each other. It was just similar to the process like basically everyone in the show had to go through at some point.
My initial reactions when the show started, I was pretty overcome with emotion, to be honest with you, because we ourselves, Matt and Andrew and I, went on quite a journey together to do the work that they needed to accomplish to put the show on. And it was incredibly rewarding, but it was tough. We had tough work that we had to do, and we had a very tough schedule that we had to keep to get it done on time. So it was as if when the show opened, all of that came back very quickly. And just seeing everything start to come to life, and how beautiful it was, and how well the performers did, even with the little time they had to rehearse. It was very overwhelming. I shed a few tears, I will tell you, honestly.
This is the thing about Shanghai that I feel like is kind of different to other shows, in that because it is student-led from beginning to end, there's so many more connections being made. Usually during school, because maybe the producer or the director is maybe a teacher, it's usually just the cast that's together, but this time it's like everyone involved has such a strong relationship with everyone. So I know that although the actual show is over, like the connections that we made aren't over. And I was actually telling Andrew the other day, like, I've never been in a production, either backstage or as an actor, where even after the show, people are so engaged, like the actors or like still speaking about their lines, still singing the songs, or even talking about a sequel. And I've never been in a production that people are so excited about the show that even after it, they're still talking about it, which I feel is very special about the show.
I think everyone involved in this production, like, everyone will be great people in the future. I can see it. I can actually see it. You know, like, Andrew could literally be a director in the future. I won't be surprised, right? I think we're all gonna go to really great places. And like, I'm trying to think, if in the future, when we actually do great big things, are we still gonna remember Shanghai? Because right now, it feels like the biggest thing ever, right? On opening night, it felt like the biggest thing ever, because we've been putting 100% of ourselves in for 2 months. But, you know, in like 10 years, we might be putting 100% of ourselves in something for like 10 more years, and we're not even gonna remember. This is just a tiny thing in our past, you know? So I think it's good that, you know, we're making this documentary to really document all of the current feelings and the thoughts, and make it last, and really like hold on to this memory, you know, and make everything count for what it is, so that nobody forgets all the work that we did, and that nobody forgets that this happened.
Shanghaied in the dictionary means something else. Shanghai to me now means something that I'm honestly quite proud of, something that I've, you know, worked with a lot of other people to create. Shanghai to me means 384 pages of music. Shanghai means like all these rehearsals that I'd put in. Shanghai means all this time I got to work with operations and all these very heated debates and meetings that we had. And overall, I think it means a creative journey like no other.
Shanghai life.
Look around, what you see, it's a place where we're free, no surprise, for it's Shanghai.
Full of love, full of life, full of conflict and strife. Here's why, for it's Shanghai. This city brings us together in ways never seen Just look around and take in the sweet sound. Shanghai will satisfy. Near and far, please to roam, but it still is our home. Don't sigh, for it's Shanghai, the most wondrous place to be. The city that I can see. Shanghai.